Oh, hi, movies.
How many times have we all sat on the couch chatting with our buddies about this great idea that we'd had for a movie, and then actually try herding all of the damn cats required? Hell, I bet nowadays we've got folks spending a good chunk of time trying to wrangle their friends for a 2-minute TikTok or a D&D session, let alone a full feature-length film. It should go without saying that organizing a film is tough business, and yet we've all seen stuff where we go, ha, I can do better, and then, well, more often than not, we just leave it there, don't we? Edward D. Wood Jr., for all of his faults, actually managed to get all those kiddies in line. Well, sorta. Harry Medvid, along with his brother, political commentator, film reviewer Michael Medvid, infamously dubbed him the worst director of all time in their 1980 book, The Golden Turkey Awards, noting the quadruple threat, director, producer, writer, actor for his overcooked dialogue.
Colonel Tom Edwards, in charge of saucer field activities, was to make the greatest decision of his career. He made that decision. Colonel Edwards gave the signal to fire.
Undercooked special effects, and a generous use of stock footage. He also had an oddly colorful and charismatic personality, which included a now well-known penchant for the fluffiness and sensuality of Angora sweaters, as well as a knowledge and passion for film history, and, perhaps less charmingly, severe alcoholism. But I get ahead of myself. Now, 1992 saw musician and film historian Rudolph Gray collecting a series of interviews into his book Nightmare of Ecstasy, where the late Wood's friends and colleagues shared a series of reflections on their relationships with him, interspersed with excerpts from his films and several pulp novels he penned in the time before his death in 1978. And it's this book that leads us to the 1984 film which was based upon it, dubbed simply Ed Wood, which is a wonderful dramedy helmed by none other than Tim Burton at his prime. Prior to this, Burton had made his mark as Hollywood's maverick yet profitable Mr. Spooky with works such as Beetlejuice, the Michael Keaton Batman films, and Edward Scissorhands. For better or for worse, the guy had basically founded the Hot Topic aesthetic before it was even a thing. Now, having proven his bona fides, he was given carte blanche to do whatever he wanted and was granted $18 million by Columbia and Touchstone Pictures to produce a black and white biopic on a then even more obscure director, albeit with the star power and powerhouse performances of a pre-scandal Johnny Depp in a titular role, and Martin Landau as his good friend and movie legend Bela Lugosi, who was most famous for playing the original Dracula in 1931. Through the course of the film, and without getting too heavy into spoilers at this point, the film can be divided into roughly 4 segments. A prologue consisting of Wood's start doing stage plays and running story at a Universal soundstage, with the subsequent 3 acts revolving around 1953's Glen or Glenda, 1956's Bride of the Monster, and 1959's infamous Plan 9 from Outer Space. Depp expertly portrays Wood as a carefree, wide-eyed man-child who just loves to put his dreams and idiosyncrasies on celluloid and makes up for what he lacks in polish with sheer bravado.
Look no further, I'm your man. I work fast and I'm a deal. I write and direct, and I'm good.
As presented in Burton's narrative, he's a guy who embraces his weirdness and just wants to make stuff. Burton as a director has always loved his screwballs and makes it clear that it's not them who need to change and grow. It's all those squares and fuddy-duddies all around who've got the real problem. Wood hustles with various would-be distributors and financiers, trying to convince them, with varying levels of success.
Really? Worst film you ever saw? Well, my next one will be better. Hello?
He also finds an unlikely yet close friend in Bela Lugosi. At this point in his late 70s and suffering from a hidden morphine addiction, the men bond with each other over a passion of films gone by.
Giant spiders, giant grasshoppers, who would believe such nonsense?
The old ones were much spookier. They had castles, full moons.
They were mythic. They had a poetry to them.
Yes.
Wood's talent for old-school schmoozing leads him to assembling an eclectic de facto stable of local Hollywood characters, TV psychic Criswell, drag queen Bunny Breckenbridge, and TV horror hostess Vampira, along with relatively normal guys Paul Marcos and Conrad Brooks. They're fairly loyal, if sometimes snarky friends to the pair of Wood and Lugosi. They're just happy to really be a part of something. Not so happy is Wood's initial girlfriend, the actress Dolores Fuller as portrayed by Sarah Jessica Parker. She tries to be supportive, but grows restless that the carnival that Wood is bringing about just isn't translating to bills getting paid, and understandably gets PO'd at being left dry for another woman who may or may not be able to actually fund the project in exchange for starring in the film instead of her. Indeed, getting money to make his dreams come to life is a constant struggle. Financiers demand he cast unsuitable actors and make changes to his visions.
I want the movie to end with a big explosion.
Yes. But it ends with Dr. Voronov falling into the pit.
Not anymore.
Because, in the end, 16mm film isn't free, and neither is a real estate to roll these pictures in the first place. The scenes of Eddie trying to get his films off the ground and the series of mishaps that happen on the set will ring way too frackin' true to anyone who has ever had the adrenaline rush of guerrilla filmmaking. Anyone that's done even a modest short film can identify with someone forgetting a small yet crucial device for a prop, dealing with a flimsy set, or just working around actors who do things like having their own ideas, or dying before you can get them on tape, or film for that matter. The film does tend to put a bright and cheery face on all of it, which is worth exploring more in the video. Look, if you're seeking an opinion of this movie, it's absolutely terrific. Highly recommend it. I loved it when I caught it on network TV when I was like 12 or middle school or something, I can't even remember. I loved it when I was in college, and I probably love it even more today as an old man on the internet. Every performance is stellar. Landau rightfully won an Oscar for his portrayal of Lugosi as a sick yet troubled man who nonetheless clings on to hopes of future stardom.
Andy, why did you chase them? After all these years, the press is finally interested again in Bela Lugosi. There is no such thing as bad press, Andy.
Depp is utterly infectious with showing his passion, his love for the craft.
If I have the chance, I could make an entire movie using this stock footage. The story opens on these mysterious explosions. Nobody knows what's causing them, but it's upsetting all the buffalo. So the military are called in to solve the mystery.
You forgot the octopus.
No, I'm saving that for my big underwater climax.
Even if the wood we see is probably nothing like what we saw on the film. Landau and Depp have great chemistry together as a real odd couple, and it's just nice to see a portrayal of true male friendship and bonding over shared passions, without seeping into melodrama. Well, most of the time anyways. The rest of the cast's also fantastic, especially Bill Murray in a quippy role as Bunny Breckenbridge, frankly talking about feeling trans in the 1950s, well before any of this had become nearly the cultural hot-button issue it is today.
I'm getting my first series of hormone injections. When those girls kick in, they're going to take out my organs and make me a woman.
I also want to shout out the cinematography by Stefan Kazapski. He makes Burton's direction and the script ooze with an equal mix of noir, horror, and whimsy. Nothing else quite looked like this in the movies, and his use of shadows and rim lights almost become characters in their own right through the film.
Yes?
Which dress do you like better?
I don't know. Say, Bill, which dress works better for you, the red one or the green one?
Which one is the red one?
What do you mean?
I mean, I can't see the difference. I'm colorblind. But I kind of like the dark gray one.
Now, how does Ed Wood the man live up to Ed Wood the legend, as portrayed in the film at least? That gets rather interesting. Proper spoilers from here on out, by the way. What's funny is that some of the most insane capers in the film are actually based on true events, or at least true recollections of events as detailed in the aforementioned Rudolph Gray book. Gray, in his foreword to the book, makes it very clear that it's an oral history, and sometimes the story one person will tell will contradict with the story somebody else tells. So,
is it possible this story is true?
The baptism to gain funding to make a horror movie?
Yes. A similar event did take place.
Lugosi being replaced by a chiropractor following his death?
You're right. It's fact.
Wood requiring dentures due to losing his teeth to the butt of a Japanese rifle.
Not this time. It never happened.
Wood being a supportive friend to Bela Lugosi.
What really happened here?
In real life, his family had some doubts, feeling that he was just trying to exploit this fading star for all he was worth in the twilight of his years. But most of the people around him basically agreed that Wood was nothing if not genuine. He really did want to support Lugosi. He really did love his work, and I think it's kind of understandable. You're meeting your idol and having a chance to work with them. That's a dream come true for any director. Now, Eddie directing movies while wearing women's clothing.
Our research found a published report of a similar story.
That was documented as happening a bit later than Plan 9, when he was working on strictly adult films, but technically,
it happened.
Now, Eddie wearing women's underwear while fighting the Japanese in World War II, that gets a little murkier. Wood was, to say the least, a complicated figure. He was as much P.T. Barnum as Neil Breen, and he was not shy about boasting about his war exploits. They have been found to be rather exaggerated thanks to the research that author James Pontilillo made in his book, The Unknown War of Edward D. Wood Jr. That said, Wood was unusually frank with his ideas about sexuality,
Nature makes mistakes. It's proven every day. This person is a transvestite, a man who is more comfortable wearing girls' clothes. Give this man satin undies, a dress, a sweater, and a skirt, or even the lounging outfit he has on, and he's the happiest individual in the world. He can work better, think better, he can play better, and he can be more of a credit to his community and his government because he is happy.
And even when he was making porn, he expressed a commitment to not just wanting to shoot smut, but putting some quality to the pictures. If nothing else, the guy did care about his craft as much as Depp portrayed it. So to that point, Burton's film does capture some of the complexity in a frank and unapologetic way that was as surprising in 1984 as it was in 1954, and holds up surprisingly well in the 2020s, while not at all feeling either preachy nor pandering.
I like to wear women's clothes.
Huh?
I like to wear women's clothes. Panties, brasiers, sweaters, pumps. It's just something I do. And I can't believe I'm telling you this, but I really like you, and I don't want it getting in the way down the road.
Does this mean you don't like sex with girls?
No, I love sex with girls.
That being said, due in part to the film leaving us in 1959, after Planet for Outer Space premieres and Wood decides to marry his new girlfriend, Cathy O'Hara, the movie also glossed over a lot of Wood's seedier aspects. The real Edward D. Wood Jr. was a literal raging alcoholic, quite racist, was married 4 times, and was frequently abusive of his final wife, Cathy. The later chapters of Nightmare of Ecstasy have some pretty hard-to-read, unvarnished accounts of these couples shouting matches at each other, and casual screaming of racial epithets at blacks and Mexicans in the streets of 1970s Los Angeles. It's really hard to square these foul-mouthed abusers with the wholesome sweethearts we get to see in the movie. Then again, that's just it, isn't it? People's lives and relationships are often more complicated than the tidy, polished images they tend to put forth to the public, whether it's at the bar or on social media. But frankly, reading some of these accounts made me wonder how Cathy or his ex-girlfriend Dolores Fuller could speak so glowingly of him following his death, knowing what they must have known. I mean, Cathy O'Hara, she had her gravestone marked with, "She hitched her wagon to a star." I mean, clearly she cared about him. And this leads me to think a bit about legacy, reputation, and the nature of connection. Modern audiences have had something of a reevaluation on Wood's filmography, in particular Glen or Glenda. Now, this was a time before pride months and flags, where even homosexuality was a gross taboo in every sense of the term, and the very idea of being trans was simply out of the question. Hell, even in the 2020s, some parts of Glen or Glenda feel just as relevant as ever.
The world is shocked by a person who changed his sex. Glenda is shocked also, but by another reason. Someone like her had the nerve to do something factual about their situation. There are so many problems for Glenn and all the other Glens. Perhaps the fear of discovery of the underthings they wear beneath their regular outer clothing.
And its weird, disjointed mix of documentary, drama, and stage play actually feel kind of downright at home in a YouTube video essay these days. Even Wood's Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is essentially the story of a government cover-up of alien technology and humans developing weapons of mass destruction, feels rather resonant as we hear of a third world war being an actual possibility and not just fodder for a science fiction script, saying nothing about the recent congressional hearings about UAPs.
But last night I saw a flying object that couldn't have possibly been from this planet. But I can't say a word. I'm muzzled by army brass. I can't even admit I saw the thing.
Not really my wheelhouse, but interesting nonetheless. And yet, given Wood's tumultuous and frankly messy personal life, I can't help but wonder what we would make of him today if he were here with us now. Would the people accept Edward D. Wood Jr. as he is? Would he have made some effort to clean up his act? Or would we just cancel him as an abusive bum and he'd go on, I don't know, some podcast or another? I don't know. And frankly, I'm kind of glad that we don't have to know. I'll be honest, I've had the Nightmare of Ecstasy for a few years, but I hadn't actually read it in full till after I rewatched the movie, and I'm frankly glad I did. It's hard to square the optimistic man Johnny Depp gives us with the frustrated and frankly broken one he truly seems to have been, but isn't that why we even bother watching movies? To see the best of our stupid human minds and not just the stupid? Thank you all so much for watching this far into the video. I'm really glad to have you here, and I'm really glad for all the comments and support. Even if it's just a, hey, that was a good review, it feels good, you know, you're not just screaming to the void. So yeah, it took me a while to put this one together. A mix of just New Year festivities and really trying to organize my thoughts on this one and just doing research and trying to figure out what to put in, what to take out and all this stuff. I really want to shout out again Rudolph Gray's Nightmare of Ecstasy. Excellent, excellent book. And I also want to shout out the Dead to Rights blog. I'm going to put a link in the description, or at least try to. I don't have YouTube's authorization to give direct links, but I'll at least send you the right way. The Dead to Rights blog publishes a new Wood Wednesdays every week, and it's just a treasure trove of information about Ed Wood. Not just his movies, but also he used to do novels as well, and this guy covers all his novels. And also where I found out about The Unknown War of Edward D. Wood Jr. by James Pontilillo, which I have not had the pleasure of reading, unfortunately, just because I've been lazy to fork up the money to actually buy it. I'm sorry. I'll be happy to buy it once I got some spare cash. But yeah, I haven't really done this much research for a project like this for a while, so it's almost like I'm a big boy YouTube video essayist instead of just a guy yakking about movies on the internet. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was that I think that director Tim Burton and screenwriters Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski, they kind of did Dolores Fuller a bit dirty in this movie. Now, as a piece of drama, it completely works, mind you. But the fact remains the real Dolores Fuller was nothing but supportive of Ed Wood, both financially and materially. She just knew that the path he was taking was not the path for her, and she was kind of right. She gently left him and went on to be a songwriter for no less than Elvis Presley later in her life. And in reality, Ed Wood did have a wife who did basically go screaming for the hills within days of marrying him after finding out about his transvestism. But it's a little unfair, I think, to assign that reaction to someone who even years later talked about him like this.
I loved that man. He was so talented, and if he was only alive today to see what was going on, they say if he did it, I can do it.
But that's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? You have to kind of assign roles to different people, and maybe it doesn't reflect the full reality, but it speaks to the deeper truth. I mean, a lot of Ed Wood is surprisingly factual, like I said. It's just that it's a very heightened reality. Well, that's just showbiz, I guess. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention the passing of another legendary director. Frankly, one that's probably more worthy of the mantle, though no less a renegade in his own right. And that, of course, is David Lynch, whose passing was announced earlier today at the age of 78. It feels almost as surreal as any one of his own movies that he will no longer be with us going on forward. I hope that in heaven everything is fine, Mr. Lynch. And for everybody else, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And, of course, peace.